Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are diving into the Enlightenment era in England, and this is the 10th video in the series on the history of English literature. In case you have not watched the previous videos, I suggest that you do to understand better the events that transpired during this period. First, let's quickly recap how we got here to this period. Before the Enlightenment, England had gone through a lot of political and social upheaval. The English Civil War led to the execution of King Charles I, followed by the strict Puritan rule under Oliver Cromwell. After years of turmoil, the monarchy was restored in 1660, with Charles II coming back to the throne, marking the Restoration period. While the Restoration brought some stability, the country was still grappling with questions about power, religion, and governance. All of this set the stage for the Enlightenment, which kicked off in the late 17th century and it stretched well into the 18th century. Now let's jump right into the heart of it. The Enlightenment period, also called the Age of Reason, was a period where people started to place more value on reason, science, and critical thinking. It was a time when thinkers started to question the traditional authority, whether that authority came from monarchy, the church, or the long-standing social norms. Everything was being questioned. People wanted to understand the world through observation, logic, and experimentation, instead of relying solely on religious or royal proclamations. The idea was that humans could make progress, improve society, and solve problems by thinking things through rationally. One of the key political events that really boosted the Enlightenment thinking in England was the Glorious Revolution of 1688. We talked about this in the previous video as well. Glorious Revolution was when King James II was overthrown and replaced by William III and Mary II, who agreed to rule under constitutional monarchy. This event was crucial because it limited the power of the king and gave more authority to the parliament. The idea that rulers should govern with the consent of the people, or at least their representatives, that became a cornerstone of Enlightenment political thought. This shift towards a government based on laws and reason rather than the whims of one ruler set the tone for many of the ideas that would come out of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment in England would not have been possible without the scientific revolution, which laid the groundwork for a new way of thinking. Figures like Isaac Newton made discoveries that completely changed how people understood the world. Newton's ideas were a game changer because they emphasized observation and experimentation over faith or superstition. If you could understand the natural world through science, why could you not apply the same logic to human society and politics? This belief that reason could be used to improve not just science but all areas of life was at the core of Enlightenment thought. When it comes to Enlightenment political ideas, one name stands out in England: John Locke. Locke's ideas were revolutionary for their time and they deeply influenced modern democracy. He argued against the idea of the divine right of the kings, the belief that monarchs were chosen by God to rule. Instead, Locke believed in a social contract, where government power that comes from the consent of the governed consent देते हैं. Locke's most famous works, like two treatises of government, that laid out the idea that people have natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and that the government's job is to protect these rights. If a government fails to do this, Locke argued, the people have the right to overthrow it. Locke's ideas would later influence major revolutions, including the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Now, during the Enlightenment, something really interesting happened. More and more people started to participate in the intellectual life. This was partly due to the rise of the public sphere, which was a space where people could freely exchange ideas. One of the most famous, most popular public spaces for these discussions: coffee houses. Coffee houses became hubs for intellectual debate where writers, philosophers, and scientists and everyday people could gather to talk about politics, science, and philosophy. If you had an idea, you could bring it to the coffee house and find people willing to discuss and challenge it. These discussions played a huge role in spreading Enlightenment ideas, making them accessible to more than just the elite. Another key part of the public sphere was the rise of the print media. Newspapers, pamphlets and books were being published at an unprecedented rate, allowing new ideas to spread far and wide. People could read about politics, philosophy or the latest scientific discoveries and then discuss these ideas with others in public spaces. This openness to debate and the exchange of ideas was a hallmark of the Enlightenment. Remember, this is the time when you have many famous people starting periodicals. You have figures like Joseph Addison and Richard Steele being two such names. And the periodicals and all, from this period are something you should have a knowledge of since they are asked in the competitive papers. Periodicals like The Spectator, Rambler, etc. Now, the Enlightenment was not just about politics and science. It was also a time of major cultural and literary achievements. Let's look at some of the most influential writers and works of the period. One of the most popular forms of literature during the Enlightenment was satire. Writers used humor and irony to critique the political and social norms of the day. One of the best examples of this is Jonathan Swift, who was famous for his biting satirical works. Swift's most famous book, Gulliver's Travels, is a satirical adventure that takes aim at everything from human nature to the absurdity of the government. In the book, the protagonist, Gulliver, travels to various fantastical lands, each of which serves as a critique of some aspect of society. For example, in Lilliput, where the inhabitants are tiny, Swift pokes fun at the pettiness of political disputes. Another powerful work by Swift is A Modest Proposal, a satirical essay where he suggests that the poor Irish might ease their economic troubles. How? By selling their children as food to the rich. Imagine! While this suggestion is obviously shocking, Swift used it to highlight the British government's neglect of the Irish people, making it one of the most effective pieces of critique ever written. See, again, Swift is a highly important writer for the paper and therefore you have to delve deeper into his works. So in case you are preparing on your own, make sure you study him in depth. Or if you want everything sorted out for you at one place, you can consider joining my online course. Just visit my website theankitajain.com or you can call me on the number showing above in case you have any doubts or queries. Now, another major development during the Enlightenment was the rise of the novel as a literary form. Before this time, poetry and drama were the dominant forms of literature, alright? But the novel, that offered a new way to explore the individual lives and moral dilemmas. One of the first English novels was Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. It tells the story of a man who's stranded on a desert island and his struggle to survive. Defoe's work was followed by novels like Pamela by Samuel Richardson and Tom Jones by Henry Fielding, which explored the themes of personal morality, class and social issues. These novels were revolutionary because they focused on the lives of ordinary people, not just the kings and heroes, and they raised questions about how individuals should live their lives in a rapidly changing world. These are just a few of the writers I have mentioned here. There are many other novelists and poets as well that you must make sure to study. For example, Alexander Pope, Thomas Gray, Lawrence Sterne, and so many others. And how can one even dare to forget Samuel Johnson? Highly important figure. If you want the names of the important writers from this era, just go to my website again, theankitajain.com. Under the syllabus section in British literature, you will find all the writers you need to study, and all these writers are the ones I also take up in my online course. So that's all for today's session. Remember, if you're preparing for exams and need some free study material, download my app. For a full guided experience, you can enroll in my course where we cover everything in depth. Also check out my Telegram channel for free PDFs and quizzes. Let's stay connected by following me on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any queries, feel free to reach out to me anytime on the number showing above. Do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for updates. Also do let me know in the comments below how you are liking this particular series. And if you have any suggestions you would want to give me, thank you so much for watching and let's meet in the next video.